Joinville, Brasai, and Quinzelo. I am so happy to be here. This is my first time in Brazil. It's my first time in Joinville. It's my first time at Expo, and I am really, really, really impressed. Wow. We had a fantastic dinner last night. We had a fantastic workshop this morning. I'm just delighted to be here. Thank you so much for having me. And I'm going to be talking to you today about collective intelligence. And what can you do to be leveraging collective intelligence to future-proof yourself, to future-proof your business, your organization, your team, your profession, your career, your life. And we are in this increasing VUCA world. Who in the room agrees with me that we're in this accelerating world of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and it's just getting faster and faster and faster. And we have to have the collective intelligence to be able to deal with it. And but first of all, I want to talk to you about my favorite sport, football. I love football. You love football, many of you. And have success in the Copa America. Costa Rica, not so much. England also are not playing that well in the Euros that are happening right now. But I have my fingers crossed. We graduated from the group, and now we're into the playoffs. So good luck to you and good luck to me. Of course, next year, we get to host the World Cup in Mexico, Canada, and the USA. So we'll see you there. And there's nothing I would love more if England and Brazil end up in the final together. How cool would that be? And of course, think about what it takes to win a football match. Think about what it takes to win a major championship. The World Cup or the Euros or the Copa America. And think about the collective intelligence that it takes to do that. That's an incredibly simple thing. Putting the ball in the back of the net, how hard can that be? It can't be that difficult. Yet Costa Rica, Brazil, 0-0. England, Slovenia, 0-0. It's really hard to do that. It takes a lot of collective intelligence. It isn't necessarily about putting the best individual players on the field. It's about having the best collectively intelligent team on the field to be able to do that. So that's what I'm excited to talk to you about today. This is the marketing page for the Euros. And what do we see here? We see that BYD is coming. The Chinese EV manufacturer. They are coming. They're going to try to eat everybody's lunch. And imagine what can happen here in Brazil as they launch their new product, the Seal, as they build factories here in Brazil. Imagine what can happen when this is Santa Monica in Los Angeles in the future. And BYD has a beautiful retail store there in the future. How are General Motors and Ford and Tesla, how are they going to deal with this? It's going to change everything for sure. Yes, we'll put up tariff walls for a while because BYD are part of the hub for electric vehicles in Mexico that's taking shape. We'll put up tariff walls for a while. But that's only a short-term solution, right? And they are going to undermine the automotive industry in the USA where I live. I live in Southern California. I'm English originally. I'm American now. I've been there 25 years. I live in a beautiful wine district called Temecula Valley, sort of in the middle of Los Angeles, San Diego, and Palm Springs, right in the middle here. There's a gorgeous Temecula Valley wine district. So how are General Motors and Ford and Tesla and Chrysler and Toyota and Kia Hyundai, how are they going to muster the collective intelligence to win against BYD and all the other electric vehicle manufacturers who are coming. They're going to try and eat your lunch. And so we live in this VUCA world, this world of volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and it's only going to get worse. It's only going to get faster. This is a fantastic book. If you haven't read it or you haven't listened to it, Azim Azhar talks about the birth of the exponential age. And what he basically says is this. He says, if you think this is fast, think again. It's about to be redefined as slow. It's only going to get faster exponentially, incomprehensibly. So if you're already struggling now to keep up, buckle up. You haven't seen anything yet. It's only going to get worse. And there's even a movie about it. So if you haven't seen the movie about VUCA, go to the link there, and there's even a movie. It costs you $3 or $4 on Apple, iTunes, or something, but it's worth watching to understand what VUCA is and how it's impacting your world. So go to the link and get the movie. Where did I first learn about VUCA? When I worked on offshore oil and gas drilling rigs. I'm a petroleum engineer. I was a geophysicist by training in my degree, geology, physics, and maths. That was a natural training to join the oil and gas business, and I worked for Shell for 5 years in my 20s and worked on offshore oil and gas drilling rigs. Fantastic place to learn about VUCA. Week on, week off, helicopter out, helicopter back. When you're on 24/7. You sleep if and when you can. In all weathers, in all circumstances, in all situations. And I learned at a very deep level how to deal with volatility, uncertainty, complexity, and ambiguity, and win. Because as you saw from the BP Gulf oil spill and the movie that was shot about that, Deepwater Horizon, if you're not careful on an offshore oil and gas drilling rig, things can go really bad, really big, really fast, with few second chances. And you will pay the price of the consequences very soon if you're not careful. So I had the experience of collective intelligence and agility in the real world. And then I went into business, and I ended up running the aerospace division of a British public company you've probably never heard of called Spirent. Initially, I ran a number of their high technology, hardware and software innovation businesses as the CEO, and then I ended up running the whole division. And that's what took me to the USA in 1999, because we acquired 3 businesses there for my division. And I was going there every other week, so I ultimately moved there with my family, and I'm now a citizen. And I get to vote in this year's election, but how I'm going to vote, I have no idea. Don't get me started about American politics. We'll be here all day. So I had experience in the business world of running very high technology businesses, very innovative, very fast moving, in a public company share price sensitive environment, where they want the predictability of a quarter by quarter by quarter performance to keep the share price going in the right direction. Very predictable, very plannable is what they want from me, but I'm running very entrepreneurial, innovative businesses that's very unpredictable. So I began to feel like there's this void, there's this vacuum. I've read all the big books, I've talked to all the big consultants, I've worked with all the big training organizations, and none of them seem to fully understand what it's like to sit in my seat and have to fully fill the shoes of my role and fully fill the seat of my role. So I decided to take the leap from the corporate world 20 years ago and go into the advisory world. And now for 20 years, I've been helping CEOs and executives, the C-suite, master agility and collective intelligence. And I want to just share a few insights with you of things that I've learned over those 20 years and what I've been doing to try to fill that void. Because I understand what it's like to sit in your seat. It's not easy. And I want to give you a little bit of inspiration today to help you on your way. I've written some books along the way. There's an ebook here that I'm going to give you at a link a little bit later. I've used Google Translate to translate it into Portuguese. It's probably imperfect, but if you'll tolerate that, then it'll be there waiting for you. I'll give you a link to show you where to go for that. And this is the last book that I'm working on right now. I call it The 5 Roles of Everyday Agile Leaders. And if you follow the link, you'll find some early material that's taking shape around all of that. I hope those things will inspire you. Here's the ebook. It's called The One Advantage, How to Introduce a Peer-Powered Culture of Agility into Your Organization. And there you see at least the Google Translate version, imperfect as it will be, no doubt, that'll be waiting for you at the link as a downloadable PDF. Here's what I want to suggest to you. I want to suggest to you that we're in a new battleground of success in business. We've got VUCA coming at us from the right-hand side. We're in this exponential age now, not least of all driven by artificial intelligence. And no doubt over the 3 days that you've been here, you've heard a lot of people talk about artificial intelligence and how it's going to drive things, and the good, the bad, the ugly of artificial intelligence, and how it's going to determine your future, and how it's going to drive exponential VUCA like you can't believe, exponential change like you can't believe. And I fully agree with that. And what I want to suggest to you is that human intelligence will remain as critical. As artificial intelligence rises up in criticality, human intelligence will need to rise up alongside it as a progressive convergence towards what we call collective intelligence. The combination of human intelligence plus artificial intelligence equals human intelligence plus artificial intelligence equals collective intelligence. And what you'll see here is that I'm going to invite you to go on a 5-level reset. Level 5 being, how do you develop an intelligence advantage? And if you think that you're already at level 5 leadership, level 5 culture, level 5 communication, if you already think you're at level 5 anything, I invite you to reset to 0. That's the only safe thing for you to do in the face of exponential VUCA change, is reset to 0 and go on a 5-level reset. That's the only safe thing to do. What is it that builds up to this intelligence advantage? It's the other levels. And how do we get from this saying that we've used for a long time, that none of us is as smart as all of us? How do we get from that to what's called a supermind? And there's a fabulous book by that name called Superminds. It's by a gentleman called Thomas Malone. And here's what he says. He says we're spending too much time thinking about humans or computers. And we need to be spending more time thinking about humans and computers. That's where our intelligence advantage will come from in the future. And how do we develop and leverage these superminds to be a competitive advantage in the future? There's a center for collective intelligence at MIT. This is serious stuff. The domain of research of collective intelligence is almost as deep as the research into artificial intelligence, which is why MIT has a center for collective intelligence, and the author of this book is one of the leaders of that center. So more than ever before, I'm going to invite you to tune into the concept of collective intelligence and how can you develop it as a competitive advantage. To do that, I want to take you on a brief journey of these 4 levels that add up to an intelligence advantage at level 5. And the first is to develop a peer advantage. The advantage of how you and your peers interact. I'll come back to that momentarily. That becomes a good foundation stone for developing a cultural advantage. The advantage of having the culture you want, the culture your people want, and how do you truly institutionalize that culture into your business? Because frankly, present company excluded, I don't mean you in the room, not you. I mean everybody outside of this room who didn't come to Expo. In most businesses, in my experience, and maybe yours, the culture you think you have is not the culture you really have. It really isn't. In many, many, many companies. Not yours. Present company excluded. So what can you do to truly develop a cultural advantage? How does that add up to having a peer-powered culture of agility that becomes an agility advantage? How can you stay ahead of your competition? How can you stay ahead of the expectations of your different categories of stakeholders, your customers, your suppliers, your vendors, your employees, your debt holders, your shareholders? And not least of all, how do you develop an advisory advantage? What I want to suggest to you is that in an accelerating VUCA world of exponential change, you have no chance of having all the insights and wisdom and perspectives that you need inside the 4 walls of your company. No chance anymore. It's all just moving too fast, too big, too far. You're going to need to develop an advantage of getting external advisory input into your business. I don't necessarily mean coaches and consultants and all of that. I mean your governance board, your advisory board, peer advisory groups, and those kinds of things to make sure that you are getting all of the input, external input that you need into your business to be future-proofing yourself and adding up to this number 5 level of how all of that adds up. Artificial intelligence and human intelligence equals collective intelligence. That's what I want to try to inspire you to do. And that's what the book is about. So enjoy the Portuguese translation of the book. And the first thing I want to do is to talk to you about each of these levels. First and foremost, peer advantage. I've been in the business of peer forums and peer groups for 20 years. Confidential forums of non-competing members from different industries and different businesses who come together once a month in a confidential setting where they can bring any problem, any challenge, any issue, any opportunity, and process that with their peers. I've been doing that for 20 years. And it's remarkable. It's absolutely remarkable. It's been the highlight of my career and my life. I've had 40, 50, 60 members at any one time in different groups over the course of 20 years, probably had 200 or 300 different CEO members and executives of these different forums. Some of whom were in those forums for 15 years, 12 years, 10 years, 8 years. Why? Because they find it so invaluable, irreplaceably invaluable, like no other experience that they can get anywhere else. The safety, the trust, the transparency, the challenge, the accountability is like nothing else. And I remember one of my members, his name is Andreas. He's German, Andreas Schenk. He was an incredibly successful high-tech CEO with a private equity-backed company. He was in one of my groups. And one day, he got fired. He was doing great, but he had a disagreement with the private equity bankers and he got fired. So now he had to decide, what am I going to do? And he brought that issue to the group. The group processed it with him repeatedly over the course of months and years. And 10 years later, Andreas had a fantastic exit of a business that he had started and built. And 10 years later, he had a fantastic liquidity event and exit. And one of the reasons was that Andreas was so passionate about the experience he had in his peer forum, is that he took that inside his company. And he started to leverage the power of peers and developing a peer advantage inside his own business with the safety and the transparency and the trust and the accountability and the challenge. And one of my co-authors of the book, The One Advantage, is a gentleman called Leo Batari. And he's a world-leading thought leader in this whole concept that he calls peer novation. Peer novation. How do you take the power of peers inside your company to turbocharge the innovation of your company? So that's what I'm talking about here. Over and above teamwork, how do you leverage the power of peers as a competitive advantage inside your company? And locally here in Joinville, you have a fantastic organization that I'm also part of in San Diego and Los Angeles called Renaissance, where we run these kinds of peer forums. So you have a great opportunity to get involved, and many of you are involved in that already. Secondly, how do you create a cultural advantage? So the other co-author, Jason Richmond, he's a world-leading authority in culture. And if you read the book, we'll talk about the process by which you can fully institutionalize the culture that you want inside of your business. And how do you get the behaviors that you want? How do you get the lack of excuses that you want in your business? How do you get the team ethic and the creed and the work ethic that you want in your business? How do you fully institutionalize that? How do you measure it? How do you design it? How do you incentivize people? How do you motivate people to want to raise the game of your culture in your business? And, one of the things I love to do when I do this work with companies is I love to throw down a challenge. Because most companies will have a set of core values, on the wall somewhere or on the website or something. And I will say to them, I want to see you institutionalize your core values into your business in 100 different ways. And they look at me like, are you crazy? General Electric, with several 100,000 people, I could understand them institutionalizing their core values in their business in 100 different ways. But, we've only got 500 employees, and we've got 30 employees, and we've got 5 employees. It's like, I don't care. I want to see you institutionalize your core values in 100 different ways in your business. I do want to see it on your website and on the wall. But I want to see you train for it, coach for it, mentor for it, hold people accountable for it. I want to see 360-degree assessments, annual performance reviews. I want you to start and finish every meeting by talking about your core values. I want your financial incentives to align with your core values, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Now, do I really mean 100? No. I mean, shoot for 100. If you get to 10 or 20 or 30, you'll be way ahead of most companies. Most companies don't do this. One of my members was a gentleman called Jamie Prevost. He had a large construction company. He really got hold of this idea of truly institutionalizing his core values into his business. As you walk around his business, you see it everywhere. You hear people talking about it everywhere. He starts and finishes every meeting by talking about core values. By the way, core value number 1, agility. He trained his people on agility. He did something called fast cycle teamwork training, which I love to do. And probably institutionalized his core values in 20, 30, 40 different ways into his business. Just had a fantastic exit, fantastic liquidity event, now moving on with the rest of his career. So I urge you to work on developing your cultural advantage. How does that then become the foundation stone for your agility advantage, a peer-powered culture of agility? We just did a workshop this morning for a number of the Renaissance CEOs here in Joinville. A fantastic session. And what we started to talk about was most people massively oversimplify agility. They think that, small companies, mid-market companies are naturally agile. They're categorically not. They're naturally frenetic, hair on fire, seat of the pants, disorganized chaos. That's not agility, I can assure you. If I operated like that on a drilling rig, I wouldn't be there very long, nor would the rig either. So it's all about understanding the moving parts of an agility operating system and what it truly takes to be agile. And then also, how do you, each of you individually, need to show up as an agile leader? And I talk about the 5 roles of everyday agile leaders and the 5 attributes of agility to change your relationship with. Number 1, chaos. Most leaders, in my experience, not you, present company excluded, everybody else out there, are stuck in disorganized chaos way too much. And how do they change their relationship with chaos and live in organized chaos? It's going to be chaotic. How could it not be? In a fast-moving future, of course it's going to be chaotic. But if you can live in organized chaos, not disorganized chaos, that's a totally different world. That's a beautiful place to be. That is fun. If you're living in disorganized chaos, that is burnout. That is feeling frazzled. That is frustrating. It's 2 completely different worlds. So how do you develop an agility advantage? And last but not least, how do you develop this advisory advantage of getting the advice into your business that you need to make sure that you've got the full radar scope that you need, scanning the horizon for the next VUCA coming in your direction like a freight train? If you see that too late, if it's upon you before you see it, if it's putting you into crisis before you've had chance to sort of pre-handle that, you're going to be lurching from crisis to crisis to crisis. So one of the organizations that I'm a part of also is called the Advisory Board Center. It's out of Australia. It's the world-leading organization in professionalizing and training and certifying the advisory board sector as distinct from the governance board sector. And every 2 years, we publish a market research report of the global trends of what's happening. And what we're seeing is that companies of all shapes and sizes, from startups to global public companies, are supplementing their governance board with an advisory board as a much more dynamic, agile radar scope to make sure that they're fully thinking through and talking about all the VUCA that's coming at them in the future. And I invite you to be thinking about how are you going to be developing an advisory advantage as level number 4. All of these levels add up to your collective intelligence advantage, especially when you add in the artificial intelligence side of the equation. This becomes the human intelligence side of the equation. Now, I spent 20 years immersing myself in the complexity of agility. I apologize for the font here. It seems to have gone wrong, but that's okay. It still works. The complexity of agility, and I wanted to cut through the complexity and the hype and really bring it down to the essence of what's at the heart of agility. And what I came down to was this concept that I call C2C. Conversation flow to cash flow. Conversation flow is at the heart of your collective intelligence. It's at the heart of your agility. In other words, what I want to suggest to you is that cash is not king anymore. Cash is not king anymore. It used to be in the 80s and the 90s and maybe the 2000s, but not anymore. In an accelerating, exponential change world of VUCA, cash is not king anymore. Conversation flow is king, and cash flow is a way of keeping score. You show me a company with poor cash flow, or a part of the company with poor cash flow, a product, a program, a niche, a sector, a market. You show me a company with poor cash flow, and I will show you a company with poor conversation flow, and it doesn't take me very long to do it. You've not been talking about the right stuff in the right way at the right time. You've not been seeing it coming before it's seen you coming like a fool, because you haven't been talking about it. You haven't been figuring it out, and sure enough, now it shows up in your cash flow. So what I want to convince you of is this, that where your conversation flow goes, your cash flow follows. Where your conversation flow goes, your cash flow follows. Does anybody know who that is? That is Alan Mulally. He was the CEO of Ford. He turned around Ford Global from 2006 to 2014. Before that, he was the CEO of the commercial airplane division of Boeing. Before that, he was the program director of the 777, one of the most successful commercial aircraft of all times. He gave us a quote on the front of the ebook. I wrote a chapter about him in the ebook, and I asked him to review it for me, which he did. I have a relationship with Alan Mulally from my aerospace days. I had major systems on the 777 aircraft. He's a wonderful guy. He was more than happy to help me. And here's what he said. When he read about this concept of C2C, he said, I just had to call Mike immediately and tell him it's one of the best descriptions I've ever heard of what I did at Ford. And it gets to the heart of the challenge. He went on to really crack the code of agility at Ford, and it was all about the quantity, quality, and cadence of conversation flow that he drove at Ford. That before he got there, it just wasn't there. And then within days and weeks and months, he shifted Ford's conversation flow into a whole new gear of quantity, quality, and cadence. The revolution, the frequency, the turnover of that conversation flow. And consequently, that started to show up in their cash flow, and that started to show up in their share price. And he just agreed that it just hit the nail on the head of what he did. And I was blessed one day. I was in dialogue with him. I was having this conversation with him. I was running these peer forums, and I asked him, I said, Alan, have you ever been to a peer forum? He said, no. What's that? I said, well, do you want to come and experience it? He said, sure. So he came and spent the afternoon with me. There he is, next to the gentleman in the red jumper, with me and my peer forum. And these are CEOs and executives just like you. Just like you. And he loved it. At the end of the day, he said, wow, I've never experienced anything like this before. We processed issues like we would normally do in a peer forum, and he participated, he played along. It was beautiful. And he just couldn't stop talking about it. And at the end of the day, he stood up at the flip chart and he started to describe how he shifted forward into a whole different gear. And he started to describe his perspectives on agility and agile. And it was just remarkable to be part of that. That's the quote that he gave us on the top of the book here that's waiting for you. He loves the approach. It aligns very beautifully with what he did. And really, what he did at Ford was a transformation of collective intelligence. Frankly, Ford went from being collectively unintelligent, to put it mildly, to becoming a lot more collectively intelligent as a team. And that's what he did. And what is agility? Let's talk about that for a moment. What is agility? Well, agility is the ability to adapt, essentially. It's the ability to adapt in the face of these rapidly changing circumstances that we call VUCA, right? And as we talked about earlier, staying ahead of the expectations of, staying ahead of your competitors and staying ahead of the expectations of the different categories of your stakeholders, like we said earlier. And to be agile requires an agility operating system, and it requires you to show up differently as an agile leader, and I call that 5 roles of everyday agile leadership. And you'll find some resources about that at the link that I'm going to give you. So I want you to percolate on a couple of questions for yourself as you go on your way at the end of the afternoon here. And I want you to be thinking about what kinds of VUCA are you experiencing in your business, in your role, in your seat? What kinds of VUCA are you already experiencing and or do you anticipate experiencing in the future, not least of all artificial intelligence? And number 2, how is your agility being tested? You see, I want you to become students of agility because your future depends upon agility, perhaps even more than you realize. And I want you right here, right now, I want you to flick a switch up here and just say, tick, I'm going to become a student of agility. I'm going to become a student of collective intelligence. I'm not just going to become a student of artificial intelligence. I'm going to make sure that I've got the other side of the equation coming along as well. And I'm going to be a student of both collective intelligence, all 5 levels, not least of all agility. That's what I hope you will take away. What Alan Mulally did at Ford is he addressed all of these 5 levels, and he moved the needle on all 5 levels in multiple different ways, but not least of all in one particular way, which is really the secret of agility. The thing that he put in place, that he changed in Ford, is the central cog in the agility wheel. It's going to disappoint you. It was meetings. He completely changed the approach that Ford took to meetings. And he moved the needle from slow, bureaucratic meetings overload to what we call agile meetings. And if you read the ebook, you'll read about how he did that. You see, if I was walking around the hallways of your business and I asked people about meetings, tell me about meetings around here, but what's your experience of meetings around here? You can already hear the kinds of things they're going to be saying, right? Oh my gosh, let me tell you about meetings. I'm in meetings overload. I'm in meetings all day long, so much so I have to do my day job at night and on the weekends. And the meetings, they start late, they run long, they're not well chaired, there's no clear agenda, there's no clear follow-up. Oh my gosh, I'm in meetings overload. You see, but what Alan Mulally understood is that most people think meetings are time-consuming or worse, time-wasting. But what agile leaders understand, and if you read the ebook, you'll find out about this. No. Agile meetings, when you know how to run them and how to design them, agile meetings are time-saving. Agile meetings are chaos-saving. Agile meetings, at the extreme, on an offshore drilling rig, are life-saving. So I invite you to change your relationship with meetings. And I invite you to not see meetings as part of the problem. I invite you to see meetings as part of the solution, because that is the central cog in the wheel of how Alan Mulally turned around Ford. That is the number one thing that he addressed and that he did. And I invite you to do the same. And he saw the benefits at all 5 of these levels in doing so. He's a big fan of the idea of artificial intelligence and human intelligence coming together, so much so he gave me a great quote. And, in Boeing, if you think about Boeing when he was there and Ford as well, I mean, Boeing and Ford have been doing artificial intelligence for decades in some way, shape, or form, right? For Boeing and Ford, artificial intelligence isn't new. They've had smart systems and smart this and smart that for decades. It's not new. So, yes, there'll be a next chapter, there'll be a next generation of artificial intelligence, but it's not new. And so he really understands that the human intelligence side of the equation remains as critical and needs to rise up alongside artificial intelligence. In fact, so much so, he even suggests, I'm sorry that's cutting off, he even suggests some new language of how we bring new words to the equation. So the question remains, how do you become collectively unintelligent? What happens that causes you to become collectively unintelligent? What causes you to fall asleep at the wheel? What causes you to sort of fall behind the curve? Be sort of blinded by things. What causes that? And you can imagine the bureaucracy at General Motors and Ford before Alan Mulally's time, and now even after Alan Mulally's time. You can just imagine. And would you place a big bet that they're going to out-agile the Chinese? I don't know. I'm not sure. Of course, talking about Boeing, what a tragedy Boeing is these days, isn't it? How collectively unintelligent Boeing has become after Alan Mulally's days. If you listen carefully to some of the stuff in the news now, Alan Mulally's name comes up every once in a while. People say, man, it wasn't like this back in Alan Mulally's day. Gosh, if Alan Mulally was only 10 years, 20 years younger, and we could get him back. So much of this, are you collectively intelligent or unintelligent, comes back to you. And who are you in the equation? How are you showing up in the equation? You, individually, as a leader, as a CEO, you can be the pivotal difference. Do you have an organization that is leaning in and becoming collectively more intelligent, or an organization that's falling back and becoming collectively unintelligent? Even General Electric, GE, back here in the 80s and the 90s, GE was held up as an American icon of industry and business, not just American icon, but a global icon. It was the source of all business best practice. It was the source of many CEOs. They thought they were immune until they discovered that they're not. So if any of you are sitting there thinking, no, I think we're good. I think we got this. If you're remotely thinking that you were like GE was thinking back then, I just invite you to be a little bit more paranoid than that. You remember that saying, only the paranoid survive? I want you to be a little bit paranoid. GE's been broken up. It's been kicked out of the Dow Jones Industrial Average. And yes, its share price is clawing back now. But my point here is nobody is immune from this in a VUCA world. So please, please, please be a little bit paranoid. I grabbed this. This, of course, was the BP Gulf oil spill, as featured in the movie. This is what can so easily happen when you work and live on an offshore oil and gas drilling rig. And the post-investigation reports concluded that this accident had been waiting to happen for 10 years because of the way that BP was ripping cost out of its quality assurance, its safety management, and was just under more and more and more performance pressure. It had been waiting to happen for 10 years. they'd been going collectively unintelligent for 10 years. We could probably say the same about Boeing, couldn't we? Boeing has been going collectively unintelligent for 10 years, but nobody saw it. I want to celebrate some Brazilian case studies here. Wow! Embraer used to be a client of mine in my aerospace days. Wow, just look at this and what you're doing to be part of an exponential future is just amazing. You know, we've talked about aerospace examples and automotive examples, but before long, we might not be talking about those two as different industries anymore when there's a convergence coming together that Embraer is leading the charge on here. It's just amazing. And even when this business unit that they spun off went amazing. It went IPO in 2022. I'm on the advisory board. How did this happen? I'm on the advisory board of a women's fashion business in Miami. How about that? Could you imagine that? Me? But I am. And it's called Sitka Semch, and it's a brand line out of Peru. And so I've been following very carefully what's been going on with Farm Rio. And Harvard Business School have written a case study about Farm Rio, and it's very informative for us. So congratulations again on some great stuff that you've got taking shape here in Brazil. And, you know, I asked Celio and Alonso and the team, I said, hey, which is one of the best business schools here in Brazil? And you've had some speakers here at Expo, and there you see the word adaptable, adapting to the future. So congratulations. There's just so much to celebrate here in Brazil. And by the way, in Joinville in particular, I've been absolutely amazed. It's my first time here, as I told you. I had no idea what's going on in Joinville until the dinner last night when we heard a speech from the mayor and we heard a speech from the governor. And the governor and the mayor and some of the other speakers pretty much said, you know, from an innovation point of view, from an agility point of view, from a collective intelligence point of view, you quite likely might be the number one city in all of Brazil. That's amazing. That is just amazing. So you are a case study of collective intelligence yourselves. And this event, wow, thank you so much for having me at this event. It's just been unbelievable. So you are already a very good example of collective intelligence. I just want you to keep going. Don't take your foot off the gas pedal. Keep going on that 5-level reset, because there's more and more and more great things to come. And if you remotely take your foot off that gas pedal, remotely, bad stuff can happen to you bigger, faster, sooner than you think. Maybe even bigger, faster, sooner than your worst nightmare. Just think about BP. Just think about General Electric. Just think about General Motors and Ford in terms of what might be happening next. So I just invite you to think about this C2C journey that you're on. I invite you to think about going on this 5-level reset and leveraging the success factors for a peer advantage, the conditions for a cultural advantage, the system and the roles for an agility advantage, the external input on radar scope for an advisory advantage, and then the collective intelligence of human intelligence plus artificial intelligence. You're going to find a lot of inspiration about it in the book and that whole convergence. So I invite you to go on that journey, which leaves us with only one thing left. We've been talking about collective intelligence. And these images convey what collective intelligence is. You've got a shoal of fish here avoiding a threat. And the question becomes, how do we measure collective intelligence? You've got a flock of birds here acting with intelligence. You see so many examples in nature of individual, relatively unintelligent actors who collectively together become a very intelligent whole, and they can do amazing things together. We see it in so many ways in nature, of these individual, relatively unintelligent individuals coming together as a very intelligent whole. Harvard has studied this, and they built 1,000 relatively dumb robots and they gave them a very simple programming, and a little while later, they had come together intelligently to create recognizable shapes. Just amazing. There are things called prediction markets now, where you get everybody's input and you can predict success with movies in the case of this. Of course, we've got the sort of open source software systems, Wikipedia, even LinkedIn. These are all forms of collective intelligence. And of course, winning a football match, right? Putting the goal on the back of the net is collective intelligence. MIT talks about measuring collective intelligence. And then there's a very famous example of measuring collective intelligence. A gentleman in England called Francis Galton back in 1906, he went to a country fair where there was an ox. And he had people, as they were passing by, he had people guess the weight of the ox. And he had several thousand people do it, and he tallied up the results. And at the end of the day, the average of the answers, the ox weighs about 1,000 pounds, was correct within 1 pound. At the end of the day, it was correct within 1 pound. So that's the power of collective intelligence. There's a great book about that called The Wisdom of Crowds. And what it says are, the many are often smarter than the few. And there are other people that have done things like, how many jelly beans in the jar. But I don't have that much use for that many jelly beans. So instead, I do how many golf balls in the jar. Because I got use for that many golf balls. That'll last me about 2 months. And so what I'm going to invite you to do, normally I bring the jar with me, right, and the golf balls, but I couldn't imagine trying to do that here in Brazil. So what I invite you to do is we're going to measure the collective intelligence of the audience here. If you can pull out your smartphone, what I'm going to invite you to do is I'm going to invite you to go to menti.com. Just go there on your smartphone, go to your Google browser, just type in menti.com into your Google browser, and it's gonna then invite you to put in a number, and you're gonna put in that number there, 382351, no spaces, 382351, no spaces, at menti.com. And when you get there, you're gonna see a screen like this, and you're just gonna drag the little button over to whatever you think is the number that's in that jar of golf balls. How many golf balls in that jar? Just take a guess. How many golf balls in the jar? Everybody getting there? Yeah, you getting there? Menti.com. 382351. Are we seeing some results? Are we seeing some results coming in? Yep, okay. All right, can you share the screen for me? Let's see what we got here. Oh! Ooh, okay. Oh, and it's going down, what, 155? How many people? Look at this. 380 people. Beautiful. 153.7. The correct answer is 122. Not too bad. Celio and Alonso, I think this audience is a keeper. Congratulations to yourself. You can give me my final screen. I urge you, please, 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 to future-proof yourself in an accelerating exponential age of VUCA. Please, 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 do not just be focused on artificial intelligence. I urge you to also be focused on collective intelligence. If you'll go to the link, you'll find the ebook. You'll be able to download some other resources. Obrigado for having me. Thank you so much.
Mike, very nice, good presentation. It shows us that we have worked harder. I'll make the questions for you in Portuguese, so the audience will understand and she will translate to you, okay? Como orientar um gestor? Como orientar um gestor para motivar os colaboradores operacionais da base da empresa a serem mais ágeis.
You need to translate for me. I don't have any.
Okay. How to orient a manager to motivate the low-level people to be more agile?
That's a great question. Agility is absolutely something which you have to work on top down and bottom up simultaneously. Oftentimes, we see people working bottom up. They launch agile software development or agile project management or agile something else. But the C-suite isn't agile. And the C-suite, if you're not careful, becomes part of the agility problem. So my work is coaching and facilitating agility in the C-suite. And with some colleagues of mine, doing the bottom-up piece, where it's important for you to choose one business process. I like to call it the drive shaft business process. It's that business process which gets from the engine of your business to between the rubber and the road, getting traction. Start with that business process first and get that team involved bottom up. And the real key of Agile, to do an Agile transformation, is to be agile with agile. Don't try to boil the ocean all of a sudden. That's not agile. Agile is take something small and do something fast with it to experience a benefit quickly and get the snowball rolling. And that's the best way to motivate people. When they see the benefits, when they feel the benefits from a small pilot, a small prototype, and they want the snowball to roll bigger, faster, sooner. And so choose something small, start small, and finish big.
Okay. There is another question. The guy sent it direct in English. If agile meetings are the secret key, where or how should conversation flow take place?
Just one more time.
If agile meetings are the secret key, where or how should conversation flow take place?
Yes. Yes, so conversation flow to cash flow, because conversation flow is at the center of your agility and your collective intelligence and future-proofing yourself, because conversation flow is so central to that, then necessarily meetings are, because much of your conversation flow occurs in meetings. Not all of it. Email, voicemail, Slack, Teams, WhatsApp, just casual conversations in the hallway. Those are your decentralized, asynchronous elements of your conversation flow. Those are the spokes of your wheel of conversation flow. But no amount of spokes make up for the lack of a hub called centralized, synchronous meetings. And what I invite you to do is to bring more design to the meetings in your business. Think about how much design you invest in your products, in your processes, in the way you lay out your office environment, your factory floor. You invest a lot of design, multiple layers of design in all of those things. But typically, people don't bring much design to their meetings. They bring a little bit. I want you to invest a lot more design in the portfolio of meetings that you run. Alan Mulally ran a portfolio of meetings, annual meetings, quarterly meetings, monthly meetings, weekly meetings, daily meetings, sometimes twice a day. And how do you line up that spectrum? How do you be talking about the right things daily, for 20 minutes, 30 minutes, fighting the fires, dealing with the tactics? And the more effective that meeting is, it means that your weekly meeting is more effective because it's focusing on the weekly stuff, not this stuff. And your monthly meeting becomes more effective, and your quarterly meeting and your annual meeting. So how do you bring design to that with the right agendas, facilitated in the right way, with the different conversation flows that need to be happening at all of those different levels?
Thank you. You talk about the 4 levels of where a manager should be involved. There is a question here. It's easy to measure each person when we are talking about productivity, when we are talking about operational excellence. But how to measure people, how to measure the evolution when we are talking about innovation and breakthroughs that we have to do?
And what's the word you're using? How to measure? Or how to
measure the...
Measure.
Measure, yes.
Yeah, you know what people do typically is they measure what's easy, not what's right. Many of the right things to measure are not easy to measure, and so many people don't measure them. So that's the point, right? You've got to measure the right things to measure, even if they're hard to measure. You can, by and large, you can measure anything in some way, shape, or form because you can always do a survey or things like that. Now it'll be quite qualitative data. I mean, obviously you can get some quantitative stuff like we just did. I just did a measure of your collective intelligence as an audience. It's very basic. It's not going to stand up to scientific scrutiny, but it gave a little finger on the pulse, didn't it? It gave us a read. And that's okay. That's more of an indicator. That's more of an indicator than a measure. So I couldn't agree more with you. Having key performance indicators across your business and at all of those 5 levels will be crucial. Some of them won't be easy to measure. You're going to have to stick with it, bring creativity to it, and bring design to how can we measure that in some way, shape, or form anyway.
Okay, understood. Well, another question. How to reduce the unclarity of conversation, the flow of conversation between high level and low level?
That is crucial, and you know, I serve on a lot of boards, and the best training that I've had for how I now show up on boards is the work that I get to do in these peer advisory boards like Renaissance. Because when you're in this safe, confidential, transparent place of a diverse peer forum of non-competing members, you learn how to get very good at listening, and you learn how to get very good at the questions you ask. And how can you thread a needle with the questions you ask where they are simultaneously respectful and probing? They're on point, and they drill and they drill and they drill, but they're doing it in a respectful way where the person who's receiving the question doesn't feel diminished, they don't feel belittled, they feel respected, and they're warming up, they're opening up to the inquiry of where the question is going. And I've been doing that for 20 years, which means I'm now a much better board member than ever I was because of the quality of conversation flow that can occur. Whether it's working at the level of boards, or perhaps you're working with an individual project team for the day, they're struggling, and you want to ask them, you know, open-ended, unloaded, clarifying questions about where are you struggling and where are you not. We were talking about this earlier this morning, and there's often a lot of confusion about if I'm showing up with a project team and I'm asking them a lot of questions, isn't that sort of micromanagement? And what I like to explain to people, which of course you learn on an offshore drilling rig, is there's 2 kinds of micromanagement. There's the bad kind. Hey, is it done yet? What's taking so long? Why are you doing it that way when my way's better? That's bad micromanagement, breathing down somebody's neck. But there's a very different form of micromanagement that's really good. Hey, how's it going? What are you struggling with? What help do you need? What support are you not getting from whom? What else could we do to help you? That is so good as micromanagement. Let's call it micro-leadership. It's micro-leadership. I'm asking you clarifying questions to enable and empower and help you. So if you can show up here doing micro leadership at every level, that will give you a much better conversation flow.
Good. Keeping in the same direction, how is a good time for a productive meeting? How is the maximum of people to be productive in a meeting? How is the frequency? And is there any suggestion?
So I get asked these questions a lot, and of course you know what my answer is going to be. Well, it depends. I want you to be thinking about that spectrum of meetings from daily to annual. Obviously annual, it's going to be more people, it's going to be longer, it's going to be a bigger agenda. Down here it can be less people, shorter meetings. Some cases it doesn't have to be. One of the best examples I can give you, or two actually, very quickly. So Alan Mulally used to run a weekly business plan review meeting of his global team for 3 hours, once a week, with 70 people. Global team, so virtually, before COVID, virtually. And if you read the book about how he turned around Ford, there's a fantastic book about it. If you read our book, you'll hear about it as well. That approach to meetings was unlocked the whole turnaround. And initially, when he first launched it, people thought, what do you mean? Once a week, 3 hours, 70 people, it's going to be a disaster. I hate the idea. 3 months later, they love it. Another example that's even more shocking. General Stanley McChrystal wrote a great book called Team of Teams. He was the supreme commander in Iraq when we weren't doing well, and he turned around the course of the war back in the mid-2000s, something like that. And he launched a daily operations and intelligence meeting, out of his command center in Iraq. And they technology enabled it so that anybody could be dialing into this meeting, from the Pentagon to a special forces operative on a sat phone behind a rock hiding over there. Daily operations and intelligence meeting, reported in his book Team of Teams. At the peak, 7,000 people participated in that every day. Obviously, they couldn't all be talking at the same time. It would be a disaster. You had to have some protocols and some norms with how you do it. But it became such a central cog in the agility wheel, the collective intelligence wheel, that 7,000 people participated in it. So there's no one-size-fits-all answer. It depends upon the design that you bring to it.
I'll make the last question as she's looking to me there. I'll join two questions here. How to develop collective intelligence together with agility in a team with a long time, with an old team, and with a lot of acknowledgement, current acknowledgement. And what are the big challenges that you face trying to promote collective intelligence?
Yeah. So I first became a managing director back in 1994. It was my first time that I was hired to be a CEO, a president, a managing director in English language. And by the end of my first day, I knew it was a turnaround, but by the end of my first day, I discovered it was 3 times worse than they had led me to believe. And I'm in the middle of relocating my family and selling houses and moving and trying to launch my career as a CEO, which I did. But that night in the bar over a beer, I'm sweating bullets. And I'm thinking, what am I going to do? And I remembered that when I was working on offshore oil and gas drilling rigs, when crises show up, the weather changes, something breaks, something else happens, we meet more frequently, not less frequently. Because agile leaders understand that when things are moving faster, we have to move faster as a collectively intelligent team. So we need to meet more frequently, go away, do our thing, come back, go away, do our thing, come back, to remain collectively intelligent. So I thought to myself, you know what I'm going to do tomorrow morning? This is back in 1994, before any of this was written about in books, I thought, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to do in the business tomorrow morning, I'm going to do what I did on drilling rigs. I'm going to have a daily huddle every single day, 8:30, my office. And we're going to dig our way out of this. And I know that if I want to change the culture of this business, if I want to change the leadership of this business, if I want to change the trajectory of this business, the number one thing I can do starting tomorrow morning at 8:30 is to change the approach to meetings, their interaction, their collective intelligence. And if I get that rolling, everything else will get easier from that point. So that's what I would do. If I inherited one of your project teams or one of your departments or one of your functions, what I would do first, starting tomorrow morning at 8:30, is I would change the approach to meetings, because thereafter everything else gets simpler. And by the way, I wouldn't try to sell the idea to anybody. I didn't get people in a room saying, hey, I'm thinking of doing a daily meeting, what do you guys think? They'd have thought, where did you land from, Mars? I didn't try to sell it to anybody. I just told them, by the way, starting this morning, we're having a daily meeting, my office, 8:30, here's the flow, let's go. Thank you very much, see you tomorrow morning, same time, same place, forever. And by the way, it worked beautifully, it turned the business around. So every business I ever ran since, first thing I do.
Mike, thank you very, very, very much. It was really a good idea to bring you here, and I believe all these people will go home today thinking about what is this guy doing? And that is the reflection we have to do. One event like that is good when we go home thinking about what that means to me. What kind of insights I can have for all this. Thank you very, very much.
Thank you.